Ask Reddit is a forum, or subreddit, on reddit.com, where users can post questions of any variety. Then other users congregate to answer those questions. I often find myself on this particular subreddit, searching for a certain type of question that frequently pops up, and every so often hundreds of users gather to answer this question, regaling readers with their stories. Specifically, the questions I'm interested in are the creepy ones. The following Ask Reddit question was posted recently with a serious tag, meaning the person asking wanted only serious responses. They received over 300 replies. I reached out to as many of the replying users as I could, and many of these kind folks replied, granting me permission to share their stories here. I'll post a link in the description to this post if you'd like to read the replies yourself. Like and comment on this episode if you want more like it, or even answer the question yourself in the comments. The original question goes as follows. People who have had encounters with aliens, cryptids, demons, or other paranormal beings, what are your stories? Posted by user Intrigued Possum. The following post response is from user Lou_WeirdAF. I have 2 stories to share. 1. When I was about 10, my grandpa died a day after Christmas Eve because of cancer. My grandma and I turned off his phone, like really turned it off. It was some old Nokia phone, no touchscreen, just a regular phone. We put it on a shelf and left it there. A week after his death, we heard the SMS tone of that phone. I was freaked out at this point because, well, it was turned off. I knew it. My grandma took it down and gave it to me to open the SMS, since she didn't know how that worked. So I opened it and I gave it to her. The SMS was from my grandpa to his own darned phone. The SMS read, "I arrived." Creepy as heck. 2. When I was younger, I lived in a big house with different separated apartments, which belonged to my aunt. There, I lived with my aunt, my grandma, her medium friend, and a coworker friend of my aunt. The coworker brought her son with her. He was younger than me. That little boy woke up every night crying at the same time, so the medium had a talk with him. The boy said there was a black man with a weird face in the room whenever he woke up. The next day, the medium friend proceeded to cleanse the area, and I watched her. As she spoke at first calm, but then aggressive, I thought something had happened. So I hid outside next to the door at a wall. I always had a sense for weird stuff like this, and when I was little, I was feeling energy pretty strong at times. The medium later told us all that it was a demon hiding in the room, but now it's gone. Since the cleansing, the boy slept normally and without nightmares. This post is from Mongoose. They're an illustrator. You can check out their work on Instagram at Mongoose or via the link in the description. I was about to turn off my light and fall asleep. Before this, though, I was just kinda looking at my closet past the foot of my bed. It's a sliding door closet that partitions part of my room into storage. So I'm looking at it, and the door starts to kind of sway, and it slides open about half a foot, slowly revealing an inky darkness. I leap out of my bed and close it while it's in the middle of opening, and I just say, "Nope, don't do that." After that, I kind of just talked to the room saying that we need to share the space and that I didn't understand or appreciate the point of opening my closet. Since then, no problems, and we ended up moving out. The following story was posted by RickRollo24. On a hunt, I encountered something in the woods. I thought it was a person in a blue coat. I approached and something didn't feel right. despite having a 7mm Magnum capable of dropping any animal in Washington. This thing made me back away slowly in fear. It darted in and out, peeking, then moved 7 feet up and peeked again. It was solid, then shimmered. I tripped over an old hobo camp. Rifle was at the ready. I backed away, very scared. I made it to my buddy's truck, which was 200 feet away. I seriously walked backwards, keeping my eye on it. My buddy shows up, and he's pale as a ghost. "I didn't see anything," he said. I didn't even ask, and he was scared, like he was about to cry. We left, not saying what we saw. A user replied to this post, discussing how terrifying it is that an armed and experienced woodsman can be so scared because of the unknown, unsettling forces in the woods. RickRollo24 replies, "It's more, it was so unsettling, I didn't want anything to do with it. Better I left it alone opposed to shooting it, since I didn't know my target. I'd never seen anything strange before. My friend has heard a woman scream, and he and his dad found a bloody t-shirt. He goes into it almost crying because it scared him, and it was genuine." This story was shared by Office Max. When we got married, my wife's sister gave us a gift certificate for a night at a bed and breakfast not too far away from where we live now. So we booked a night and went up. What I didn't know, I don't know if my wife knew, was that the place was a farm in the 1700s, and the farmer's daughter died at a young age and has haunted her old room since. Guess who got her room? They did tell us the ghost's name, but I don't remember it. We're talking 25 years ago here. So I wake up in the middle of the night. I see this white thing floating near the fireplace. It looked like a circular woven wicker sheet folded in half with white flowers in it. It clearly wasn't physically there. It's like the image was superimposed on top of the image of the room, coming from my eyes. Now, my wife is a light sleeper. If I get out of bed in the middle of the night, she always wakes up. I tried to wake her up then, and I couldn't. So I looked back at the floating image, and I spoke. "Hello," ghost's name. The thing hung there for a couple of seconds more, and then zipped out of the room into the bathroom. And I went back to sleep. Reddit user My Name Is Not Rick 78 admits this fascinating and bewildering sighting. I was about the age of 9 or 10 and was hanging out with my older sister and an older family friend with my dad in the basement. It was dark out, and at one point I decided to look out the window. To my surprise, I see what I thought was a UFO, lit up and looking like it was made out of gold, shining, just hovering about 300 to 500 meters above a field beside my house. I start to freak out because I was super into aliens and UFOs so much that I almost started to cry in pure awe looking at this golden glowing object. I tell my sister and friend, and they start spazzing out too, wondering what the heck it was. Well, we all freak out together and sprint to get my dad. He comes outside and stares at it with us. He tells us it's just a blimp, and not to worry. All of a sudden, I feel like the biggest idiot in the world. I felt pretty stupid for thinking, wow, I just witnessed a UFO, and felt bad that I'd made an entire scene out of it for everyone. I calmed down, and maybe 5 to 15 minutes later, when I went to check on it again, it was nowhere in the sky. Fast forward 10 to 15 years, and I was talking with my friend who asked, "Remember that UFO we saw when we were kids?" I said, "Oh, you mean that blimp?" He proceeds to explain that my dad just said that to calm me down, because I was going to have a heart attack. Boy, did I feel stupid now. Now that I recall, I'd never seen a blimp my entire life in the town where I live. I live in the same place, let alone a glowing golden blimp, let alone one just hovering in the sky at night. I still remember the color and glow of that object that I was looking at today, because I freaked out so bad it burned into my memory. From my memory, it's like I was looking at a zeppelin made of gold, shining and with floodlights on it. Never seen another UFO or anything paranormal since then. When asked by another user if he confirmed with his father that he had lied, "My name is not Rick78" replied. I asked him recently last year and he said he doesn't remember. Well, the thing that sucks is that my parents' memory is absolute trash. Not because they can't remember things well, but because they don't put an effort into logging their memories. I don't know. But ever since I was a child, I was forced to memorize a lot of things, and I noticed how trash my parents' memory is compared to mine. That and my father didn't put any effort into trying to remember that event. Like he dismissed me as in, like, yeah right, UFOs, LOL. I remember it clearly because it was pretty traumatic and emotional for me. I'd even think about it in high school, and growing up over the years of my life, I would think, wow, what an idiot I was thinking that was a UFO. I still tear up today, just thinking and remembering the emotion about what the heck I was looking at. Think if you just saw a golden angel standing in the middle of the night in some dark forest, staring at you, and how stunned you'd be staring in awe. Like your brain is stuck in a loop, trying to figure out or process what you're looking at. I can describe it almost as sheer terror. That's what it was for me. I had so much trust in my dad that I dismissed it as a golden lit-up blimp. I just thought, wow, humans have some crazy technology, and never told anyone about it because I was so embarrassed. I've actually never talked about it with my sister ever again, but I'll ask her if she remembers it. But when my family friend visited last year, he was going through the same emotion I was feeling. He explained it as out of this world and was 100% convinced it was something alien. A user by the name Saztac shares their encounter. One time while I was sleeping, I heard a loud pop, similar to a firecracker, but not quite as loud. I thought it might have been my computer, or some sort of electrical short, so I woke up and looked at my computer to see if there was a fire or something. I didn't see anything in the dark, so I relaxed and shifted to lay on my back to go back to sleep, looking up at the ceiling. Within a couple of seconds, I began to notice some sort of vague, shadowy figure, as if it were standing next to my bed and waving a hand over me. I've seen shapes like this before, so I watched the hand out of curiosity. Then the hand went away, and I felt the side of my bed dip down, as if something was pushing down on it. Slow enough as if not to scare me, yet firm enough to be very noticeable. This was surprising, but I wasn't scared. I looked to where the shadow was standing, and out from the dark for a brief moment, a reptilian-looking humanoid appeared there, wearing a plain and slightly loose shirt and holding a clipboard with his left hand, and holding a pen or something in his right, as if making a note. His head was in profile to me, turned to his left, so I was looking at the right side of his face. His eyes stood out to me the most. He looked concerned, had a round pupil, fairly large in size, almost cartoony looking, but kind. I could see scales outlined on his skin, and he had larger scales along his prominent brow. He had a smallish sort of beak nose, and it looked like his upper lip covered down to his bottom jaw. No discernible lips or mouth. His shoulders were very broad, more broad than most humans, and he seemed a bit shorter than a typical human, if I had to guess. I didn't see anything below where his elbows set around his midsection, so I don't know what his legs or feet looked like. The way it looked was like he and his details were outlined in the lights you see when you press on your eyes. That kind of greenish, yellowish, slightly rainbowy look. Quite bright in the dark, but still kind of faint. It was very brief, like a second, but very detailed and in the center of my vision. I have no idea what to make of it, but I'll never forget it. I tried drawing him once, but unfortunately I don't have it with me. I wonder a lot about it. This was in 2009. I would have been 21 years old. This reply was made by username Melissa Schulten. You can find them and follow them on Instagram at Melissa Schulten, or use the link in the description. I got 2 stories to tell which are not that exciting, but I'd still love to share them. 1. My grandpa passed away when I was 9, which is 10 years ago, and a few months after his death I was home alone as my parents had an appointment somewhere, and my siblings were at their friends'. I was sitting in the living room at about 9 p.m., watching TV and waiting for my family to come home. Suddenly, I saw someone in the corner of my eyes. Then I looked at it. It was my grandpa, sitting on his spot on the couch. He was smiling at me and winked. He always winked to show me he's happy. It was some kind of secret sign between us. And in the next second, he was gone. I wasn't freaked out at all. I was just happy to know he's happy, wherever he is. Although I'm 100% sure I saw his ghost sitting right next to me. 2. My grandma, wife of said grandpa, died recently. My dad and I visit her house nearly every day to make sure there won't be any vandalism and to already take some of her belongings to our house so that nothing gets stolen. She loved to collect almost everything she found interesting, so her house is pretty much full of stuff. When she was still alive and I visited her, she would always walk to the pantry to get me some of my favorite juice and come back to the living room where we used to sit and chat for hours and hours, as she is my favorite person ever and always will be. And we loved spending time with each other, like we had this special connection some humans have between one another. So my dad and I were in her house, and I don't know why exactly. It was some sort of gut feeling, I think. But I turned around and I saw a blurry grandma-shaped figure walking towards the pantry, as if my grandma herself, even as a ghost, still wanted to get some juice for me. User Empty Spork recounts their chilling tale. I posted about this before, but when I was 9, we went on a family trip to China. My family has always been the adventurous type, so naturally we couldn't just go look at the Great Wall or whatever. No, my parents hired a driver to drive us around rural Sichuan to visit yak farms and climb glaciers and crap. So anyway, one night we had to stop in the middle of nowhere. I think we ran out of gas or something. And we ended up in what I guess you would call a village, although it was basically a long dirt road with one very creepy hotel and a few corrugated tin buildings. This hotel didn't look like much from the outside, but when you went in the lobby, there was this very creepy, almost Victorian-looking ballroom. The lobby made it seem like a luxury hotel, but when you looked closer, everything was made of plastic or painted cement, like a movie set, and completely falling apart, like no one had stayed there in years. At first, our translator told us they had no rooms, but I guess she explained our situation and they came up with a room. While we were checking in, I felt this malevolent presence behind me, and I turned around. There was a girl who looked about 12 or 13 in a shadowy corner of the room, staring at me with her mouth hanging open. She was barefoot and dressed in rags. At first I was sad because I thought she must have worked there, and she was only a few years older than me. But then she did this thing with her eyes that, to this day, is the creepiest freaking thing I've ever seen. They went completely round and bulged out several inches from her eye sockets. I'd seen a photo once of someone in the Guinness Book of World Records who could do something like that. But this was a random child in rural China, doing this at me for seemingly no reason. By the time I got my parents and older brother to look, she popped them back in her head and looked normal. When we got to our rooms, there was mold on the ceiling and cockroaches everywhere. There was one bathroom for the whole floor down the hall. The lights didn't work. I went to pee with a flashlight. I turned it on, and the girl from the lobby is sitting right there in the corner of the bathroom in the dark, with her freaking eyes bugging out again, just sitting motionless in the dark. Then she starts making this sound with her throat, like the girl from The Grudge. I freaked out and ran back to our room. By the time my brother went, she was gone. So naturally everyone thought I was making crap up or being dramatic. But then we went out to dinner. She was freaking waiting for us in the lobby again. This time I made my brother look right away and he caught the eye thing for a second, which is how I know I didn't imagine it. I don't think he wanted to admit it, but it definitely freaked him out a little bit too. We go to dinner at one of the little tin shacks down the road, and she followed us all the way there, sitting down at the table next to us. By then, I'm close to a panic attack. Every time I tried to point her out, she'd pop her eyes back in, so the most my family saw was a quick glimpse. They admitted there was something off about her eyes, but other than that, they didn't seem too concerned. We got a lot of stares, since there were no other tourists in the countryside. But this was something else. I don't know how to explain it, but I was positive she was staring at me specifically, like she wanted something from me. We noped out of there early the next morning. I can't prove this has anything to do with making cursed eye contact with this girl, spirit, or demon child, but some creepy things happened on that trip and after. We had tea and my tea leaves spelled out toxic. My brother got really sick. He blamed the food and lost quite a bit of weight. I started getting really depressed and moody without knowing why. Eventually, I'd be diagnosed with major depressive disorder as a teenager, but I don't remember having any symptoms of depression before that trip. I posted about this on a different Reddit thread, and someone commented, "Looks like you found a Diao Si Gui." So I Google it, and well, guess that explains my suicide attempts. Redditor Atlas Thugged 7 recalls this harrowing encounter. I saw a pterodactyl on the coast of northern central California. Me and my girlfriend were on a road trip without any end in mind. We were just driving up the coast and decided to sleep on the beach. I'm not sure exactly where we were, but I'd say within about an hour's drive south of Monterey. As we were hanging out on the beach at night, we both noticed a huge figure in the sky. Slowly as it gets nearer, I realized that this thing was no bird. I've seen hawks, golden eagles, owls, vultures, condors. None of them looked like this. It also didn't fly like a bird. It flapped what appeared to be leathery wings very slowly. I swear, my first thought was that I was seeing a dragon. What's more is both of us saw it. We both stared at it awestruck for a few seconds before I caught its profile against the moon, and it very strikingly looked like a pterosaur. In the few moments we witnessed this thing, it was like reality froze and gelled around this moment, like my focus was being directly pointed to this thing. I found that same sensation when I've had other paranormal experiences, like the universe wants you to pay attention to this moment. Later on, I even found a website for documenting pterodactyl sightings on the California coast, with several occurring within that region. I try to remain a rational skeptic, but this was simply mind-blowing, and sure as heck felt like we were looking at some sort of flying reptilian cryptid. A user by the name of In shares their post, including some additional clarification and information. When I was in my late teens, I started developing bad insomnia. Our house at the time had 2 stories and a basement, and was on just over 2 acres of land. It was close to our neighbors, but far enough away that there wasn't much neighborhood lighting. Consequently, it became very dark outside at night. One night, I was home alone with my younger brother, while my parents and youngest brother were at a hospital with my dad, who just had surgery. My brother was asleep, and I was just starting to go to sleep, around 3 or 4 in the morning, when suddenly I heard heavy footsteps downstairs and someone walking back and forth. Naturally, I thought someone broke in, and I was terrified. I determined that if I remained quiet, whoever broke in would just take some stuff from the main floor and leave without risking waking anyone up. When day came, it turned out everything was fine, and nothing was taken. There was no trace of any intruder, and all of the locks were still locked. Eventually, I got over it, but that didn't last long, because soon after, I heard it again, and again, and again, always between 2 and 4 a.m., and always on the floor below me. My family supported me but remained skeptical because of the insomnia and my general sleep deprivation. One night I was up really late with my mom, and we heard it together. Not only that, but this time, it was on the same floor as us. She said, "No way, that's just Dad. I'll go look." When she came back, she looked surprised and informed me my dad was fast asleep. The validation was nice, but I would have preferred sleep deprivation hallucinations. Over time, the rest of my family heard it and had their own experiences, with the exception of my dad, who was the early to bed, early to rise type and was sleeping during the most active times. We all called it the poltergeist. It was never malicious, but it was disturbing nonetheless. Once we were able to set up a night vision camera, we ended up capturing the sounds on tape, along with what sounded like a glass set on the counter and a heavy sigh. Unfortunately, we accidentally and stupidly taped over it when recording the Super Bowl in a hurry. Another incident occurred one evening when my brother had fallen asleep on the living room couch around midnight. Suddenly, he bolted awake with a deep sense of a presence nearby. He had that feeling where you just know something is there. He was hidden under a blanket, but he desperately wanted to run upstairs and avoid any encounter with the entity, so he mustered up the courage to fling the blanket and run without looking back. Once he was in his room, he looked at the time. It was 4 a.m. My other brother later experienced a very similar event, where he was awakened out of a dead sleep on the same couch with the same feeling of a presence. One of the strangest encounters was very unusual because it occurred during the day. My mom and brothers were on the main floor, and our Nordic breed dog, who preferred the cooler air, was in the basement. Suddenly, there was a loud slam from the basement, like someone had flung an entire couch into the air and let it fall. My brother went to investigate and saw our dog at the base of the stairs staring intently at something with his hackles raised and looking very frightened. This was alarming in and of itself, because this dog was never afraid of anything. My brothers grabbed him and took him upstairs. After that, my mom and all her brave glory went down to talk to it, to tell the poltergeist that it was dead and to go towards the light. It was after this incident we found one of our metal hammers we left in the basement bent backwards. We speculated that maybe this was unrelated and someone accidentally damaged it, so we tried various methods to bend it back to its original position, to no avail. After my mom had confronted it, the activity was reduced greatly, but not entirely. One of the last notable events occurred one evening where my youngest brother and his friends were hanging out in our basement. At this point, the stories of the poltergeist were told to our friends, who naturally were skeptical. In the corner, we had a shop vac. It was far away from people in a place where no one could have accidentally moved it. Without any warning, the shop vac starts shaking violently. My brother's friends all were alarmed and asked what was going on. My brother informed his friends, "This is the activity he's been talking about." His friends immediately went upstairs and left. My dad was skeptical about the incident and thought the case could be a small rodent accidentally crawling in and becoming trapped in the shop vac. He took the vacuum apart, but didn't find anything amiss. Eventually, the activity settled down enough that we felt more comfortable, and eventually after that, we moved. To this day, I haven't experienced anything like this, and frankly, I'll be happy if I never experience this again.